Okay, so we are going to make our new little bed for this space. So one of the things that I always like to do in advance when we're trying to figure out what size and shape we want in a space is to lay out, either some scrap board or rope or something just to kind of mark out the area, just to give us a better idea before we actually, take a measurement of exactly what we want. So this is just some scrap wood we had. We're going to go a little bit bigger than that. We're going to do about a 3 by 3.5 bed here. And so some of the considerations that we take into account when figuring out the size is we like to have enough space in between our beds for a wheelbarrow to go through, and that's just a personal choice. You can do them closer if you want, but all of our beds are about 2.5, maybe just over feet apart, no more than 3, but usually about 2.5 feet. So that's kind of what we're going for a perimeter all the way around here, and that's also so that when plants get really bushy, and kind of overflow during the summertime with some of our bigger plants, so we still have space to work in between them all. So we'll go in the back and get cutting and building here in a moment, but just wanted to take a moment to mention one thing you want to consider when you're taking your measurements. So I measured that I wanted 3.5 this way and 3 in the front, but you have to remember that one of your sides is going to gain a little bit of distance once you actually put them together, because see here, if you cut this, say you wanted like a 3-foot piece here, you gain about 1.5 inches on this end and 1.5 inches on the other end, because the 2x6 boards that we use aren't actually a true 2 inches thick, they're 1.5 inches. So you always have to take into account that you're going to gain a total of 3 inches, 1.5 inches on each end somewhere. So when you're cutting and measuring, take off 3 inches on one side. Usually we take it off our shorter side because we usually build our shorter side first and flush with the corner piece and then cap on with the longer piece, which again I'll show you when we get in the back, but just remember that when you are doing your measurements and cutting. All right, so now we are out back. We've got our wood. So we always like to use heart redwood. That's what all of our beds are made out of. So you see it'll start as this nice pink red color and then it'll age to a brown. No, we don't treat it, and there are a couple different types of redwood available to buy. There's Construction Common and then there's Heart. We try to always get Heart because it does have a longer durability, really great natural rot resistance and termite resistance. Common is still fine, but it doesn't last quite as long. They don't make Heart 4x4s. This is for the corner piece. So this is a common, but we always try to find a really heavy, strong one, not a really light white one. And then this is basically looks like almost Heart. So this will last really a long time in the inside of the bed as well. And if you do get wood at Home Depot like we do, a tip is look for the orange tags. The orange is the Heart. The white tags is usually the common. And so little tip there. So if you don't end up using redwood, another choice that people really like to use in garden beds is cedar. Personally, we've never used it, so I can't really speak to it, but I think it is a good option as well if you can't find, heart redwood. I just love the way that redwood looks. I always try to pick out really beautiful boards that have nice grain and patterns. Also, obviously, looking for any boards that are bowed or chipped and keeping those out of our pile. No treated wood. Absolutely do not use treated lumber for your garden beds. It's full of toxins and chemicals and nasty shit that will leach into your soil and poison your food. So don't use treated wood. And we don't treat or stain this with anything. We just leave it all natural. And because of its natural termite and rot resistant properties, we don't need to do any kind of weatherproofing to it at all. These are 8-foot boards. They sell them in 6, 8, 12 different ones. So you just have to crunch some numbers and figure out how many cuts you need and how many sides or ends you can get out of different sizes of pieces to choose what size you want to buy. And before we start making cuts, just one little note I wanted to mention is that just like that the boards aren't truly 2 inches thick, they're actually also not truly 6 inches tall as well. So take that into consideration when you're cutting your corner pieces, because we used to just say, oh, this is 3 boards tall or 4 boards tall, so it's 24 inches, and we'd cut this piece 24 inches. But because we actually lose almost half an inch with each board, then we'd have this thing sticking way up and have to go back and recut it and whatnot. So I suggest just actually laying out 3 of your boards or 4 of your boards, however deep you're going to do your bed. Lay it out and measure, and then you know how long you want to cut your corner piece that's going to go in as that support. Alright, so we got most of them cut already. There's a couple more, but basically we tag team it, and I'm over here with the measuring tape, making marks of where he needs to cut, and then bringing him boards, and he's over there getting them cut for us. Alright, so it should go without saying that all of this is just our way of doing things, and I'm just sharing that, so there's plenty of other clever ways, I'm sure, to build and assemble beds. But to get started here, this is kind of a weird tutorial example because this one is more of a square-shaped bed rather than a longer rectangle like most of our beds. So I won't be able to show you exactly some of the ways that we attack or approach some of that type bed, but I'll try to explain it as best I can. So usually we will start with assembling our shortest end of the bed, so like a 2-foot or 3-foot side, to our corner pieces first. And so I will pause and show you why in a moment here. Okay, because we don't have a great workspace elsewhere, we just assemble our beds here on the back patio. So starting generally with our shortest side, we will just lay out our 2 4x4 pieces, and we'll measure in between them on each end to make sure that they're equal distance apart, so they're not, you know, at kilter or sideways or wonky or anything. And then we line up our top boards flush on each end, because the other long side's going to go here later. And then we use these, right now, are 3-inch decking screws. Sometimes we use 2.5. 2.5 or 3 though is a nice length to get down through your outer board and then into that middle 4x4 support. And then we do 2 per board. So we do 2 here, and we'll do 2 here, and we'll get the last board on there and get it all lined up, and then do 2 on each end as well. Okay, so we just did on the ground 2 of those 2 sides. So we did this one, and then flip them up onto their sides to do the next section. So all that's attached right now is these were the ones we had on the ground, these 2x6s to the 4x4, and down here, flipped them up on their sides. And then we measured again in here, down at the bottom, to make sure they're equidistant and nice and parallel with each other. And then we can put our boards we're working with next on top. So these are just loosely sitting on top right now, and we're just making sure they're all nice and square. And usually that's why we would start with a short end first, is because then we would just have our shortest piece here, and this piece might end up being, for a big bed, you know, 6-8 feet long. So we want to keep it at a nice working height, starting with the short ones. And then we'll go through and just attach these guys the same way we did here, but we want to go obviously into our 4x4, not into the side 2x6 here. So our drill holes are going to go in just a little bit further. So considerations to take on the depth of your bed. All of our garden beds now at this point are either this size, the 1.5 feet deep, which is what we have out front, or these 2-foot deep beds, which is what we have all along the back patio here and in our coop garden area. And that's for a number of reasons. One is that we do have weed block fabric underneath our beds, which I'll talk about more in a moment. But so by making them nice and deep, because they're blocked off at the bottom, this gives the plants ample deep root space for growing nice and deep. And most plants do really prefer a minimum of 12 inches, but actually more like 18 to 24 to be nice and healthy. And it also helps with moisture retention. The beds stay wetter the taller they are. I also like it for ergonomics, so for my back, I'm not bending over a really short bed. But if you're not blocking off the bottom of your bed and the roots can continue to grow down into the native soil below, then you can get away with doing like a 6 or a 12-inch deep bed if you prefer. Okay, so other considerations to take when you're thinking about building a bed in terms of the length and the width of the bed is that you never want to have a bed that is any wider than what you can easily reach into from any accessible side. So that means that our beds out front, the widest ones are 4.5 feet by 7.5 feet long, so I can reach into it from any side. This one, because it's not accessible on one side, I kept it about 3 feet wide. So you would never want like a 6-foot by 6-foot square bed. It's just too hard to get to the middle. You're gonna be reaching, it'll be awkward, and you also don't want to have to step inside the bed and compact your soil. And then a small bed like this is good and structurally sound with its dimensions, but something really long like these ones, they're like, I think almost 8 feet long. Anything over about 6 you might want to add on the long side, and additional support. So you could do another piece of wood on the outside. We actually have a piece, a galvanized metal brace down on the inside that runs the whole length of these boards to support from bowing and pushing from the soil and moisture with time. All Alright, so we have the bed here and prepped. On the bottom side, we have attached hardware cloth. This is galvanized hardware cloth, and then attached it with little flathead wide screws here because we have a really bad gopher issue. So if you have any digging predators, moles, things like that, I definitely suggest that on the bottom side to help protect your veggies. And then we prep the ground space over here. This whole area, this whole yard used to be really weedy crabgrass, kind of like this stuff that's still trying to come back. So we already have weed block landscape fabric underneath here. Otherwise we would normally add it underneath a new space. But you can see we get this commercial heavy duty weed block fabric. So that's already underneath here under our several inches of gravel. So we just kind of dug out and excavated some gravel space to get the new bed in there. We'll sink it down nice and level to be even with these beds. If you don't have a weed issue, you don't have to block the bottom, or you could try doing stuff like cardboard, layering cardboard underneath to mat down weeds. Okay, we got the bed all situated, settled down in there, pack the gravel back behind and around it, and getting ready to fill it. So, getting the beds filled up. To answer the question, no, we don't ever add like filler or rocks or anything like that to the bottom of the bed to take up space. We like to have it be basically all soil for the plants all the way down. So we aim for a third compost, a third soil, and a third aeration additive. And so what I mean by that is, you know, in most garden bed mixes that you get in bags, you'll see like white little specks of perlite and pumice. We use this instead. It's 3/8 inch volcanic rock, which increases in moisture retention and drainage and aeration. So then we have that, and we have a various different bagged mixes, and then our booze, compost, and some worm castings. We'll also add some of our own worm castings in here as well, and just kind of add it as we go and mix it in layers as we go till it's all the way full to the top.